Hello, and welcome back to the Get Loved Up podcast. I am so happy you tune in every single week. And today I have a very special guest for you. Y'all know how much I love music. And today I have a special guest that uses her voice, her beautiful voice, to bring the healing aspect of music into our homes. So I cannot wait to share her with you. And also I want to thank you for leaving your reviews. I love reading your reviews. So if you haven't left one already, make sure you leave one. And as a little thank you, when you email me your review to koya@koyawebb.com, I'm going to send you a little gift. So with no further ado, let me tell you why this woman is so amazing. Jahnavi Harrison was raised in a family of Bhakti-yoga practitioners at Bhaktivedanta Manor, one of England's most important spiritual landmarks. As a child, she was fascinated with song and story and has nurtured that interest through her lifelong exploration of music, dance, visual art, and the written word. She is a musician who aims to channel her creative expression as a path to self-realization and service. For over 12 years, she has traveled the world offering her voice and violin playing in performance of sacred music and call and response mantra chant, Kirtan. Her sound encompasses rich influences of East and West and aims to offer an experience which truly nourishes the spirit. Her released and debut album, Like a River to the Sea, in July 15th and features on the Grammy-nominated Bhakti Without Borders charity album 2016. Jahnavi presents regularly for BC Radio's 2's Pause for Thought and Something Understood on BBC Radio 4. Jahnavi, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Koya.
I just want to say your voice, even your speaking voice, is absolutely phenomenal. Is this something that you practice on, or it's just natural?
I think it's always a bit of both. You know, we have our natural voice that we're born with, and then obviously anything that you do a lot, you want to refine it and make it better. So don't know about my speaking voice, but certainly with singing, I'll listen and try to improve things. So, yeah.
I love that. When did you know that you wanted to use your voice and that your voice would be your life's work? And is it your life's work, or do you have other things that you like to focus on?
I would say it has not been a moment of like a aha, like, oh, now I know. But it was a very gradual thing that unfolded almost without me really realizing at a lot of points that was what was happening. So I started playing the violin when I was like around 10 years old. And I'd always, because I grew up in this spiritual community, you know, we sang and chanted every day. I was very accustomed to using my voice, but not singing, not leading it myself. You know, I'd just be part of the congregation. And but when I started playing the violin, that was the first instrument, actually the only instrument I formally ever studied. And the violin has often been said to be a sort of vocal-like instrument, and that the sound of the strings is sort of like a voice. And so I think for me, I was very shy as a child, and that excitement of, you know, playing an instrument and being able to express through that medium was so just so captivating for me for many years. And I would sing, you know, also on my own, as we do. You know, you sing, sometimes you find yourself alone, and then sometimes I would wonder, how do I sound? I don't really know, because no one's ever heard me. But I definitely didn't have a plan to use my voice in any particular way. I love to write, I love to dance, I love to create visual art, but singing was not a thing that my dad was very well known as a singer. And so that was probably one of the reasons. A lot of people who have a parent that's well known for something, you kind of think, well, I'm not going to do that because I don't think I can do it like them. And people would say, oh, can you sing like your dad? And I would be like, no, don't make me sing. So it happened very gradually as I started to use my violin more and more publicly, because for many years I also only played for my violin teacher and in the music exams. I didn't really play outside of my house. It was just my private thing. But as I started to bring it more out in public, using it in things, somehow it just happened gradually. People were asking also for me to sing, or I would sing, sort of supportively as I would play violin supportively. And it just evolved from there. And at a certain point, I guess I started to feel more comfortable with that form of expression, and actually feel not only comfortable, but deeply inspired. And you start getting that sense of, oh, this is something that both makes me feel very deeply connected, and also I'm getting feedback from other people that they are also appreciating this. My dad always told me, because I would have so many questions about what should I do with my life, and he said, where your interest and your inspiration overlaps with what other people need and want, and that way you can be of service, that's where that's a good place to be. So I guess it evolved gradually.
I love that. I love that advice, because it's so true. When you're doing something that you love and enjoy, and it happens to be an inspiration to others, that is like that's the sweet spot in life,
It's a gift, such a gift.
Truly. Yeah. And speaking of sweet spot, your sweet spot with me was with your song Rise with Willow Smith. You produced an amazing song together, and I played it. I had it on replay for the longest. And you also generously sent me a beautiful kit of like a shell and sage. And it really set the ambiance of my space. Can you talk a little bit about that song and kind of what that meant to you?
Yeah, well, so Willow and I had released one song together back last year. It's almost just over a year ago now, in May, which was called Surrender. And we had such a beautiful experience recording that. I've spoken often about how it was just like a 6-hour period. We had to record it. I think 6 p.m. to midnight, and I was flying out the next day from LA. So, and it was the first time we'd ever worked together. We'd met before, but not done anything together. So at the end of it, we were like, wow, that was so magical. And then the next morning I flew back to England, and 2 weeks later, the pandemic hit. And so we'd had this lingering thought of like, immediately after we recorded it, we'd been like, oh, wow, we should definitely do more. And she even called me a few days after I got back to England and was like, why don't you just come back to LA? Because I've got time right now and we could actually work on a project. So I was like, yeah, why don't I do that? So I had actually booked my ticket. So the pandemic hit, and of course, everything changed in the world. And so by the time we actually got back in the same room together, months had passed. So many things had been, happening that were so bewildering to all of us. I had gone on some epic journey to actually get back into the States, because so many, borders and pathways were closed. I had to take like 4 or 5 flights and quarantine in each place for between 10 to 14 days and have COVID tests at each leg. So by the time we got together, there was a sense of, okay, this is taken on a new depth and meaning, because we've really worked to come to this point. It's not just like, oh, hey, let's just get together and, so what do we want to say now that we're finally here together? So we were talking about, Willow was playing some chords, and we were both talking about, they reminded us of dawn, of this time in the morning, or just before dawn when you see the sun coming up. And I was talking with Willow about, in the yoga tradition, that pre-dawn time is known as the Brahma Muhurta, and it's the time that is the most potent for spiritual practices and for really that awakening in the heart. What is my purpose in this life? So I was like, it would be cool if we actually recorded a song at that time of day. And at first she was like, yeah, let's do it. And then they were like, well, the engineer is probably not going to want to come in at 3:30 in the morning. So, but we had this idea that this sort of awakening and moment of dawn could be sort of a theme, perhaps, that carried through the song. So the song lyrics actually, I wrote them just all in one go. It was sort of like it just came out and was inspired by the first line of what's known as the Vedanta Sutra, which says Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Now, it starts with the word Atato, now. So the song starts with now, rise. So that it's almost like a directive. It says now, rise up and question. Ask the questions that really matter. What is the meaning of life? And so that was our inspiration for the song, both the questions themselves and the experience of having those questions come up in the heart. And like in the song lyrics say, don't hide from the questions that rise deep within. That sometimes we are avoiding those questions and drowning them out with so many other things.
That's so true. Do you want to sing some of it? I know it's hard to speak it versus singing it, but
sure. Now, rise, begin, time to awaken and ask why and when. Don't hide from the questions that rise deep within. I can't go round again.
I love that. And the reason it struck me so deeply is because I feel like during the pandemic, I was getting all of these questions coming up. I was getting all of this trauma, like, you don't know my story as much, but I had PTSD when the George Floyd incident happened because my brother was in that same position. So I went through 3 days of just seeing that be my brother. And I try not to watch. I'm empathic. I'm super sensitive. So I try not to watch those videos. I definitely have triggers around police brutality, heavy triggers. And so I know better, right? But I did see it because, of course, it was everywhere. And it was necessary. It was so necessary for me to see it. It was necessary for me to have the visions of my brother because that pain and that trauma was still inside of me. And when it came up and I was able to ask the questions of myself, like, where are you still hurting? And I was able to go to that time in my youth and talk to my brother and ask him how he was feeling about it and talk to my parents whom I'd never told about it because we had to keep it quiet on the hush because of just the climate around everything. And so listening to that song and going through all those emotions, like even now when you sang it, I just got chills in my body because it was such a healing thing. And that's why I had it on replay and just mixed with the soothing sounds of your voice and Willow's. It was just a beautiful, and the whole record I played, but that song specifically was my favorite because it was when I was listening to it, I remember just like kind of bawling and realizing that everything is happening in flow. Even the hard stuff. And so can you share a little bit about what has been the hardest time in your life? And is there a specific song that's gotten you through it?
Wow. So much from what you just said. Well, taking your question sort of backwards, I think music has been a safe space for me and a place of healing and joy and inspiration through all of my life and within memory. You know, I definitely, when I was a child, even though I had no aspiration particularly to be a musician, I wasn't thinking that's going to be like a career or something, but I just love music. And I'm also a very sensitive person. And so I think a lot of the harder times of my life were in my childhood and teens when I didn't really understand my sensitivity very well. All frequently would think that there's something wrong with me, why I feel things so deeply or I react so strongly to things, that what I thought normal people are fine with it, you know. And particularly, I think one of the hardest times in my life, and which still I feel reverberations from time to time, is when I transitioned from the very small community school that was located at Bhaktivedanta Manor, where I grew up, where, you know, the average class size was maybe 10 kids, and we did meditation and chanting before our classes, and all the, you know, spiritual teachings were woven through our standard curriculum. So we were just in this bubble of very nice people with spiritual values. Everybody kind of had a common goal, like-minded, and so on. And then going from that at the age of 9 into regular mainstream school, because that was sort of the pathway to, you know, just keep going into high school and so on. But I was completely unprepared for what that experience would be like. It was a huge culture shock. And the shock of it was profound in many different ways. And it was really an experience of, I was thinking the other day that it's funny because externally, in terms of my skin color, I don't seem like someone who growing up in England would feel like an immigrant. But coming from a culture which was very much other to the sort of mainstream culture, coming into school, I felt like so embarrassed of myself and the way that I had grown up, and my name and all the things that make you seem a bit different to other kids. And even though I really liked people and I had friends, but I felt like I was wearing a mask. I was trying to hide myself and be as nondescript as possible. And that went on for years. And I think it was only coming out of, it was really, I would say it was like a dark tunnel for a long time, that it got worse and worse till at a certain point, different experiences aligned to really help me. You know, maybe I've heard this example of the seed that's, you know, it's in the soil and it takes a certain amount of time before the sprout comes out, and then it can flower. And that sometimes takes many, many months. So when I look back at it now, I'm like, okay, I guess that was a very formative time that needed to happen. But it was certainly really difficult. And I listened to all kinds of music at that time. I really used to explore classical music, jazz. I used to listen to Ella Fitzgerald, so many different sounds and African music, but definitely Kirtan, which is the, you know, spiritual music that I grew up with. That was there in the background and gradually became not only a type of music that I treasured, but that really became like a protective shield and like a balm in my heart as I got older.
I love that. And I love Kirtan. I remember for me, you know, coming from Southern Baptist Christian girl and transitioning to womanhood. Of course, when I heard Kirtan, I didn't know anything of it. It was during me getting my yoga certification and then just, you know, going in those circles around LA. And even though I didn't know it, and a lot of times I didn't know what it meant, I knew how it made me feel. And that's what was powerful. And I think that's what still continues to be powerful about music, is how it makes you feel. So can you speak a little bit about Kirtan so people kind of understand it a little bit more? And what is your understanding of the impact it has on the body, on the soul?
What a beautiful question. Yeah. So Kirtan is a Sanskrit word, which is an ancient Indian language. Kirtan means to praise or to glorify. And you have, you can have a narrow definition of what Kirtan is and very broad definition. So a narrow definition might be that it's a spiritual practice that's, at least in one incarnation, it's coming from Hinduism. So divine names are chanted repeatedly, and that sound vibration of the divine name is said to awaken the soul to its deepest potential and true identity. But really, I think that is a very narrow definition that doesn't actually encompass what Kirtan is. Kirtan is music, or you could say all art, all expression that is in glorification of the divine. So Kirtan is not limited to any one religion or tradition. So, within a church, within a mosque, within any place of worship, within a home, within your heart, when there is an expression of love and gratitude and praise for the divine, that is Kirtan. And Kirtan is, the way that Kirtan works on the soul is, it's like an alarm clock. So, within the Bhakti tradition, which is the tradition which this Kirtan practice is very, very much a prominent part of Bhakti-yoga. Bhakti means devotion. It's said that there are different kinds of sound. There are material sounds. So, a few minutes ago, it was raining very hard. But I could say, rain, 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 but I won't be wet, because the sound of the word rain and the thing rain are different. But on the level of spiritual sound, the name of the divine and the divine himself or herself are one and the same. So to invoke that name, whatever name it may be, and it's said that there are infinite number of names for the one divine, as many as there are, innumerable waves in the ocean. So whatever name awakens your heart with love and gratitude and a sense of relationship, that is the same as, making a direct connection, a direct bond. And so it awakens the soul to that eternal nature, which is to be in relationship with divinity. So that is the core practice of Kirtan, is to not only just feel good, but because feeling good, it comes and goes. But just like in that Rise song, the refrain says "Jeev Jago." These words mean to awaken the soul, to wake up to our deepest potential, which is that I am a spark of the divine. I am capable of infinite love, infinite compassion, and that the position of the way of being, which will bring my heart, to life, is to be of service, to serve, to love, to give. So that is Kirtan in a nutshell.
I love that. I love your definition. I love how you took it from just that micro to the macro, and how it can be expansive. Because a lot of times I think people find words to be so limiting, and it's like the sense of ownership of it. But I love how you said this is how it's normally used, but how expansive it is. Because I feel like when we speak spiritually, everything is expansive, because everything is part of the one and part of the whole.
Absolutely.
I love that. I've never heard anything like that. And I think it's absolutely brilliant. And I think the more that we speak in these ways, that we believe and we share these ways, the more we are promoting more unity and more oneness. So that's Beautiful.
We need that so much. We need to remember that. I mean, I know it's, beliefs will vary, but at least for those that, are engaged with yoga tradition and these practices, we need to remember that it's not about any specific ism. There are different methods and paths to the divine, and all of them are valid. The question is, what is awakening that love? What is truly awakening that love? And like what you said, when you were first encountering Kirtan, you're like, I didn't understand it, but I knew what it made me feel. So it's a very easy thing to test yourself. Is this spiritual practice? Is it awakening love for the divine? Is it awakening a sense of deeper potential? Am I feeling like I want to serve others more? Am I finding that I'm able to shift, pride or selfishness, jealousy? Or is it bringing me in the opposite direction? Do I find that I have a lot of fear and so on? So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so powerful. Just really tuning into how a person is making you feel, a song makes you feel, and because we can't get attached to the words or what others think without really tuning into our own divine knowledge. And that's where the power is.
It's your time to step into your full power and potential. Are you tired of playing small and ready to make a big difference in the world? If your answer is yes, then the Wellness Entrepreneur Mastermind is for you. This mastermind will give you all the tools you need to turn your passion into purpose and live from a space of abundance as you let go of your limiting beliefs and negative self-talk. We coach you to thrive 1 week at a time, one goal at a time. We teach you what's working right now and what's not, so you can position yourself as a community leader and create real change in the world. If you're ready to level up and stand in your power, then go to koyawebb.com/mastermind to join our next group of wellness entrepreneurs. Space is limited and your time is now, so don't delay. Make a difference today.
I have another question, which might be a little hard, but what is your favorite Kirtan song?
What's my favorite Kirtan song?
Yes.
My favorite Kirtan song? Well, I do have many, many, many. I have a playlist on Spotify, which I keep adding things to. But if I was to choose one, I think it would be not a particular recording, but the mantra itself. And from the moment from in the womb, I was already hearing a specific mantra, it's known as the Maha mantra, which Maha means great or wonderful. And it's popularly known as the Hare Krishna mantra. So we had it on the Rise EP as the final track. It's just a very little clip called Kairava. But yeah, that mantra has really been the soundtrack to my life. It's the mantra that I personally chant and sing every day in my meditation. And it's a beautiful thing how I think we can all experience this, how, when you have a favorite song, like I sometimes use the example, like, when people are in a relationship and they have a song that's very meaningful to them, like, oh, that's the song we first danced at our wedding. And then whenever they hear that song, they're like, that's our song. So it's like, what's my song? What's my song? What's our song between me and the divine? That's my song. Like when I hear that reminds me of that sacred relationship, and brings so much peace to my heart and joy and just a feeling of protection and shelter. So I love it in all its myriad forms. I find that people who are somewhat new to the Kirtan tradition, especially when they might come into a more traditional setting, are kind of shocked at how many different tunes this one mantra can be sung. I mean, I've never tried to count, but there are hundreds or thousands. It's so, it's like you think, oh, the one mantra, okay, you might do it in a few different melodies, but it's so vast and expansive. So many times I've been to festivals which will exclusively chant this mantra for 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours. And every time it's a different melody, every time the leader changes. So it's pretty incredible.
Oh, that's amazing. Do you want to
Yeah.
share with us now?
Yeah, a very simple, very, very simple melody, which I never get tired of. It goes like this. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So
I love it.
yeah, these are names for the divine in both the masculine and feminine aspects, and it's said to be a call from the heart for connection, and also to pray to be an instrument of service in our lives. So knowing that really kind of brings purpose to life and brings so much joy. So let my day be filled with service in whatever way that's going to come to me, which is sometimes quite unpredictable.
I love that. And that's that is another kirtan that I learned when being in the yoga and the Bhakti community. Yeah. Here in LA that I loved. And I remember growing up, my mom would say, you can't say Jesus 7 times. And I would say, Jesus, Jesus. She said, you can't say it 7 times without smiling. And I would try, and I tried every time I get to 7, I'd be smiling. And to your point, when you say the words or you chant the kirtan of devotion or something that sparks your connection with the divine, it brings you joy. And that's one reason why I resonated so strongly with yoga, because even though it was different, the feeling, that connection to God, which I say God, it's the same, and so I think it's really important because there's so many different religions, and now we're open, more people are open to understanding more religion and how we are alike versus just how we are different. I think the differences are beautiful, but also the similarities are beautiful. And I think that feeling of devotion, that feeling that I don't know what I'm saying, but I feel a connection to the divine when I chant this kirtan. That's what helped me realize that I was in the right space, and in that this space was safe for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love the example that, like in India, the sun is called Suraj or Surya, and in France it's Le Soleil, and here we say sun, but it's the same sun. We're using different words, and those words, because that's the language we speak. Mm-hmm. If I say sun, you see the sun, you feel something of the warmth and light. And if someone were to say Suraj and you don't know that that's what that means, you're not necessarily going to feel that connection. But all of those words are still referring to that same beautiful sun that's giving life and so on. So yeah, to appreciate the connections and to appreciate that unity is really vital.
Beautiful. And what would you say during this time of creating music? What would you say that your journey has been like? Has it been a journey that is leading you to a deeper connection, or is because you started out with such a deep connection, and like you say, you transitioned to where you're just trying to basically fit in, if I understood correctly. Yeah. So what is that journey like in your life now?
Well, I guess I would tweak that a little to say, I wanted to not stand out, but at the same time, I didn't want to fit in the sense, I didn't want to lose what I had that, was so much part of me, that meant so much to me. So I think for an artist or a creative, the creative arts in whatever medium, they help us to process our thoughts and our emotions. And for someone who's engaging with spirituality, devotion, naturally your artistic work will reflect your inquiry and your journey. So definitely woven into everything that I put out is my journey of faith and prayer and devotion, and sometimes the bumps and the ups and downs that come in that. Faith is something for anyone listening that has a connection to God or has had that at different points. It's an up and down thing. It's dynamic. It's not something that just stays the same all the time. It's interfacing with the circumstances we find ourselves in, the things that are going on in this world, both the micro and the macro, and the questions that come up in the heart, the doubts, the fears, the insecurities. So I guess if I would say that I'm becoming less afraid to be more personal in what I put out, because I think growing up I was very much engaged with things to kind of present things in a traditional way, or in a, like if there's a song written by a saint, I'll sing it in the exact same words and in a traditional tune. And then I might start to, over time, okay, well, I want to sing these words, but I want to change the tune because I feel like this tune, that's the tune everyone sings, it doesn't really match the tone of emotionally of this song. So I want to make a different tune. And then now might be more like, okay, this is the words of a great saint. What is my experience in my own life? Let me try and express that in my own words. Mm-hmm. And that can be daunting, definitely, to share that with the world, because like anything creative, practically every day or every other day, you think, why am I doing this? And I don't know, or not why am I doing this, but should I even share this with anyone? Does anyone care? Or maybe I should just keep this to myself. But it's something that, it's very much also important to be, the more that I share things, the more that I receive feedback from others, mm-hmm. both the online community, the community around me, friends and family, and so much support. It really is a dynamic process that encourages me to be less fearful. And Willow helped me in so many ways with that. She's definitely not afraid of trying different things out, transcending genres, and just exploring.
And what do you think was the hardest part about it? Because you all are very different personalities, different people. So what was the hardest part and what was the easiest part about that collaboration?
I think the easiest part was the like-mindedness, surprising like-mindedness that we had. Because like what you say, I also thought, I was like, Willow's, I think 12 or 13 years younger than me. We've grown up in such different ways, coming from different countries, different backgrounds, different life experience fully. And I was just, I also, naturally, if you're at a certain age, you might think that someone who's sort of in a younger generation, that there might be a bit of a gap in terms of the pace or the ideas. But Willow is, not only is she an old soul, very wise and very deep person, but she also has a genuine thirst for spiritual knowledge and exploration, and a desire to go deep into that with her art, and also share that with others, share things that will uplift others. So we really united on that, and that was really like the driving motivation for what we were creating that carried us through the whole way. I think the hardest thing about it was a few things. One was the amount of time we had to create it, because we had 2 weeks basically, and 2 weeks was not. Yeah, and that wasn't even working on it every day. It was just 2 weeks time period. But Willow was actually working on her forthcoming solo album at the same time. Every other day she was in the studio with her solo album, and then we would meet. And so she was going back and forth. For anyone that's heard her single she released recently, it's like full on pop punk. And so she was like in a certain headspace, recording like the big drums and everything. And then we would come back to our spiritual, merry mellow vibe. And understandably, she was getting a little like, And then, so there was the time pressure. And then also, I think just we have different natures, and she's a lot more fast paced. She's ready to sort of just, very decisive, which is something that I often mull over decisions a lot longer. I let creative projects just sort of get drawn out. And she was like, no, we're going to decide this now. I think we should, okay, you want to do this? I'll be like, oh, okay. At first that was really challenging for me, because I was like, well, I don't know. I'm not sure yet. Maybe we should sit on it for a while. And I realized we don't really have that time. So, it was hard initially, but it brought me out of my comfort zone and really showed me what can be created in such a short space of time, which I'd never experienced before. And she says that I helped her to slow down and, learn to sort of like process things, and also ask the question why a lot, because I always would ask, well, why would we use this sound? Why would we, what's the meaning behind it? So, that was a challenge, but yeah, it was something that got easier with time.
I love that. I love the duality. I tend to love duality in life, and just experiencing the kind of chaos and then the softness. And I feel like when you look at life, you look at nature, it's like the light and the day, it's the nurturing and then the growth. There's such transition. So I love that you even had that experience of the kind of chaotic part of it, but then the calm part of it. Because I feel like it's life. Like this is what, and you can feel that. And when you listen to the album, you feel the crescendo, and I love that. That's what I absolutely love about that. It has so much range in that. So congratulations. It's so beautiful.
Thank you.
And I want my community to get to know you a little bit more. So at the end of our talks, I love to have kind of a rapid fire, but you're not kind of, can only say one sentence, one word. You can go off on a range.
All right.
So what has been in the last year, what has been your favorite book that you've read?
Ooh, my favorite book. Well, I've been reading over the course of the pandemic. I was reading a book with a group of friends, which I had read before, but I came back to it and got into it a lot deeper because we were going through so slowly. And that is a book called Unalloyed, which is a biography of a very dear mentor of mine who's no longer physically present. She passed away about 8 years ago, but her name is Yamuna Devi. And she was a really extraordinary devotional artist, musician. She recorded with George Harrison of the Beatles in the 70s. They recorded a mantra album in London. And her life story is just so inspiring to me. But recently, I've been just recently reading a book which is keeping me awake at night, and that is called Shadows of the Sun Dynasty. And it's a retelling of the ancient epic, the Ramayana, and it's by a friend of mine. It's a 3-part series, and I haven't been so gripped by a book in a long time. It's responsible for many late nights, like reading under the blanket.
That is so cool. I love that. And I hadn't heard of either of those books, so I want to check them out. And the next one, what is your favorite show that you've watched in the last year? It can be a movie or a regular show.
My favorite show that I watched. I'm drawing a blank because I hardly ever actually watch anything these days for some reason. I think the more that I engage with music and and writing and reading. It's kind of like pulls my attention away from things. But I know whenever my sister and I get together, we will more than likely end up watching, which I think in America it's called the Great British Baking Show. In England we call it the Great British Bake Off, but it's a baking show basically.
I love that. I love food, girl.
That is very soothing. It's very soothing.
That is so cool. I love food show. Any kind of food show, of course, vegan preferably. I love like the contest where it's like you have these ingredients and you have to make like whatever you can make.
Yes. I love cooking as well.
Oh, nice. What is your favorite thing to bake?
I think baking I don't do so often, but cooking, I cook a lot of Indian things actually, but also just healthy, vegan. I love making different kinds of salads, different kinds of soups, just experimenting. I find like my violin teacher used to say he was a wonderful cook as well. And sometimes when I would go for my lesson, he'd have some little thing that he had made and he would give me to try. And he would say that music and food are, they're different disciplines that are the same. Mm-hmm. And I find that to really be true, that the way that you can conceive of tone and flavor and melody and texture and all these things, it's very much can be connected with music. So I definitely cooked more. I cooked more in the pandemic. I think like a lot of people, I got into a lot of experimentation with things that I don't normally give time to.
Nice. I 100% agree. And I think, because I love music and I love food, I think it's just the passion. And the more passion you put into making your food and the more passion you put into music, the better it is. It doesn't matter what music you're singing. It doesn't matter what food you're cooking. The more passion, the more heart, the more soul, really, you put into it, the better it's going to be. So
absolutely.
I love that. Okay. And then last question. If you could wake up tomorrow and it was Jahnavi's world, what would it look like?
Ooh, Jahnavi's world. Wow. Well, I think I'd love to wake up in some kind of a forest, or, like a forest by a lake or by a river. I'm actually only like a block from the Hudson River right now, which is a great blessing, just to be near a body of water. That really affects me a lot. Nature, to be connected with nature. I'd love to come together with family or friends, or many more people early in the morning and have beautiful music and meditation and spiritual practices. I feel like when that happens early in the morning, it kind of just doesn't matter what else happens in the day. You feel like really nourished and ready for anything. Of course, I'd love other nice things to happen in the day as well, but I'd love that to be there. And I'd love to just be in a world where, like we've been talking about so much, we really appreciate this unity and diversity, not in a way that it sounds like not in a cliched way, but it's something really real and lived. There's a beautiful prayer that I recorded on a song. I recorded a single called "May All Be Blessed" some years ago. I think it was in a bit of a politically fraught time. I remember it was at the beginning of a new presidency for the States. In the States, it was also a very significant time in the UK. There was a vote to separate from Europe after so many years, decades of being connected. And there was a lot of anger, a lot of fear, a lot of emotion about it. And I recorded this song, which features an ancient prayer. And the prayer says that may everyone in all directions be blessed with good fortune, with peace and hope. May all hearts that are filled with envy and enmity become pacified and cooled. And may we all understand that we're actually, that unity truly is possible when we align ourselves toward the same goal, towards offering our service and our love to the divine by whatever name, by whatever form that we connect with that divinity. So that would be a beautiful world to me, and anything could happen in it, and I'd be happy.
I love that. I love your world, and I agree. Like, wow, if we're all on this common mission of just love consciousness, and absolutely, I want to live in that world for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for making the time. I know the schedules, we're on different schedules, but can you let everyone know where they can find you? And if you have anything really exciting we should be on the lookout for?
Yeah. So you can find me on all the major streaming platforms under Jahnavi Harrison. I also have a Patreon community, which I started last year, back in November, which has been such a beautiful experience just to engage more with a, community in a specific way of mutual support. And we do monthly Zoom calls where we study beautiful sacred songs and talk about our lives. And so that's patreon.com/Jahnavi Music. And I'm working on some new music right now, which I'm really looking forward to sharing when it's ready. I don't know how long it's going to take, but that is something I'm excited about, because I'm using a lot more of the English language, of my own words, my own poetry, which is something I was quite afraid of for a while. But the project with Willow and some other experiences have really just helped me to find courage in that. So
I love that. I love that. I can always take someone else's boldness that brings out our own boldness and fierceness. I have a book, Let Your Fears Make You Fierce. And it's like that fear of like fully expressing yourself was just kind of shattered. And you're like, wait, I can just be me now.
Yeah. And sometimes you don't expect it also. Like, I think we just have this idea that it's not going to come from somebody younger than us sometimes. I don't know why. That doesn't really make any sense. But I was thinking, well, I'm kind of like a big sister to Willow. Like, she kind of looks to me like that. And then I realized, she's like a big sister to me as well. Because she's like helping me with my fears, and I'm also encouraging her towards something that's new. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
I love that you said that, because I truly believe the soul has no age. And so when we're inspiration, even a child straight out of the womb is so full of inspiration and the ability to connect to what we were talking about in the beginning, like that connection with the divine, which is truly, I believe, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, it's like kind of who we all are. We're part of the divine. And that realization, I feel, brings us to that world where we're all vibrating on that frequency of love consciousness. So, well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Koya. Thank you.
And thank you all so much for listening. It has been so amazing to just have you tuning in every single week. Make sure you tag Jahnavi and myself and let us know your biggest takeaways from this podcast episode. I always love hearing your feedback, what you love, how it inspired you in your life. And until next time, love yourself, love others, and love the world. One day at a time, one breath at a time. Peace and love.
I just want to take a moment to say thank you for being part of the Get Loved Up community. I like to share topics and people making a positive impact in the world, and your feedback means the world to me. If you haven't already left a review, please leave a 5-star review and let me know what you want to hear more of on the show. I'm here for you, and together we're making the world a better place, one day at a time, one show at a time. Thank you for listening.